Let's introduce yourself, please, Hugh, because a bit of a special one today. We're doing 3 interviews based on one subject. You're very much different, and I'm intrigued to know, like, your background. I mean, we could probably do a full episode on you yourself and kind of how it all started, but let's go from, like, where were you born, where were you raised, and, like, you kind of throughout your career, like a synopsized version of that, if you don't mind.
Yep. My name's Hugh Gaffney. I was born and bred in Birkinshaw, Uddingston, a place called Alpine, and I'm from a big family. There was 8 of us, and it was all about, I'm just a working class boy, you know, growing up in a place called Birkinshaw, where everybody knew each other. We all had big families. My background was, I've always been local. I worked in a local pub for about 7 years. I then started at the post office, and I served my community, and I still do, 35 years on. But in that 35 years, I've also been a local councillor, and I also had the privilege of representing my place in Westminster as a local MP. But my heart and soul is for trade unions. I'm a trade union man. That's where I get my education from. That's where I learned how to do things and speak up for people. I've always spoke out for injustice. And a proud moment when I went to Westminster, I wore my uniform. And when I arrived at the front door, the chap that was taking in the new intake and new MPs, he says, "I think you've came to the wrong place." He says, "This is for the new MPs." I says, "And I'm a new MP." He says, "What are you delivering?" I says, "Justice for workers," because that's what it meant to me. I wanted to wear that uniform into Westminster. I chapped the doors of Coatbridge, Christ and Bells Hill, and I says, "All I'm asking you to do is send a working man to Parliament. Let's show that we can do it," and we've done it.
It's one of those things that it doesn't often happen, is it, Hugh? It's sort of, I won't get you started on my personal kind of issues about Parliament and people like that, but we've tried for many years to get, like yourself, a working man in there to represent the people, and I don't think it's changed anything, and I don't think it's going to change anything. Please prove us wrong. Have we done anything? Has it made a shift?
Yeah, well, to me it made a difference to prove if I can get to Westminster, anybody can get to Westminster. It's not for bag carriers, it's not for clever people. They're ordinary people, and there's some good people, but some people think they're clever and they're well above. They're not any more different for you and I. If I can get to Westminster, and I got there through my trade union, the Communication Workers Union, without them, I needed them to sponsor me to get the money to do the campaigning. But we got there, and that's what it's all about.
It is, because I think it's opportunity, and obviously majority of the time we see certain folk from a certain background getting there quicker. It's a fast track route because it's opportunity. It's where you're raised, it's where you're born, and for me it's sort of that. It's still, we end up with a working class chip in our shoulder because of that, but I don't think that should stop you driving forward to get to somewhere like that and try and make a change.
Yep, no, 100%. I mean, I only just became a councillor about 3 or 4 months before it. And I thought, if I can be a councillor, and again, encouraged by local people to be a councillor, because I was always involved in the community and getting involved and being involved in a local Labour Party. And I thought, well, if I can be a councillor, I can be an MP, you know. And there was a snap election called by Theresa May. And an hour before she called it, I got wind of this. I just happened to be through a Labour Party meeting. And I says, well, I'm going to become the new MP for Coatbridge. She says, Hugh, we've not called the snap election yet. I said, well, I'm going to be the new MP for Coatbridge and Christ and Bells Hill. I'm taking it back off the SNP for Labour. I says, because it's about, this is my turn. I've worked all this time with the Labour Party, and I'm no different from anybody else. And the person that didn't want me to go was my wife. She didn't like it because she knew it was going to take away from her family and all the rest of it. But you know, at 2.5 years, it was a privilege to stand there. And sometimes I say to myself, what am I doing in here? You know, because it's definitely, I called it Westminster Butlins because it's not the real world. You know, there's more wine in Westminster than there is water, you know. And to me, these things are wrong, you know. taxpayers' money shouldn't be paying for the amount of money getting spent in Westminster. And that's the only thing I really take out of it, is I think it was a lot of taxpayers' money. We pay our taxes every day. I always say the only people that pay taxes are the working class. Because we work every week and our money's taken automatic to pay our taxes. And that tax money that runs at Westminster could be better spent.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of lack of responsibility, a lack of awareness about different people's lives and how they work. And they won't ever see that. They won't ever kind of, you know, it's a tough one to kind of sort of talk about, Hugh, because it's without being a cynic, do you know what I mean? Without being negative about it, it's going, stop pissing out money up the wall on now, do you know what I mean? What are you doing with it? That pretty much the brunt of it. That's in my head, that's how I think.
I mean, I do have a personal point of view on, I think we've got councils in Scotland, we've got the Scottish Parliament, and in England, we've got the Westminster, you know, and that represents Britain, and I get that. But we've got 3 different parliaments, and it's the civil servants that are picking up the taxpayers' money. You know, the people doing the job are genuinely wanting change. They genuinely want to do things change. There's not that much difference between us all. You know, Jo Cox said that, and she was right. Doesn't matter what colour your flag is and who you're representing. We all want the best for working class people. That's what I want. I want the best for working class people. The wealth have got their point of view. They want the best for them. And understand we need employment to make the money go round. But there's also a need and a greed, and we don't need the greed.
Do you, I mean, your time there, did it sort of, was there anything negative that came out of it? Do you just go, oh, well, what's the point? Do you have that attitude coming out of it? Or was it kind of like, why am I even bothering? Because sometimes you try and you just get exhausted by it, do you know what I mean? But
the most frustrating bit is it's number crunching all the time. You know, you want to make change and you've got ideas and all the rest of it, but as a backbencher, it's all about supporting the motion coming forward, you know, and it's always about beating the other party, and that's all down to number crunching. And I was here during Brexit, you know, when some of these votes were really tight, one vote made a difference, you know, things like that. Really, we had to be there all the time because of Brexit. So it was a very busy time, great time, privileged to be there, but it was so frustrating when you were losing votes, you know, but it was all about number crunching. Sometimes it wasn't even the MP's view. Sometimes you were voting stuff, you weren't happy with it, but it was about number crunching. You had to beat the Conservatives, you had to beat the other party, you had to join up, you had to support things. Sometimes it wasn't always the way you wanted to do things, but that's part of the establishment.
it is, I think it's politics 101. You've got there's give and take and everything, there's compromise and everything.
Yeah.
And you've got to understand that, because if not, you'll drive yourself nuts trying to kind of force your own agenda all the time. And why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Give up. Yeah. No, you have to let a few things go just to get your thing across. And I do think that happens too often, and then your own, your own intent kind of slips away from you a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
And it does. I mean, it's like being a team player sometimes. Sometimes you have to do it, you know, because you want something further down the line. You're looking for something back as well. So you've got to go into the same people who you support to say, I need your support back, you know. And sometimes I've done favours for people just by going to a meeting, and I was criticised for turning up at that meeting, you know. I mean, I always see the humanity thing of people. These people, we're all trying to do our best. But sometimes you had to choose your meetings you had to go to, you had to watch what you're saying sometimes, and that gets you into trouble when you're just a working class boy. No harm meant to anyone, but these things happen, and it happens genuinely by mistake. But it's you the one that suffers. But I didn't suffer. I suffered, but my family also suffered. Yeah,
I think it's down to a trust thing, because you go, right, the people, I'm going to represent you, this is what I'm about. And they go, yes, of course we're all behind you. Right, off you go. What's happening, Hugh? Have you done your thing yet? Have you done what you said you're going to do? And the people are always going to poke you, but you go, look, it's not as easy as that. If I could plug you into my brain like the Matrix, right, and show you exactly how this works, you'd actually freak out that it's not that easy. And I don't think people understand how difficult everything is.
That's right.
It's a chess game. It is a very strategic chess game. And you might want to get one thing, but you might have to give up 10. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And that is like that, you know, it's, well, what do you want out of it, you know? And I'll give you my vote, but I'm coming looking for something else later on. And it might just be something simple like, you can't push emotion because you're a backbencher, so you have to see a minister or somebody who's in the cabinet or somebody who's in the know. So you have to go and see them and say, this is what I want, you know. And you might not get everything, but if you get that wee bit, you've done something, you know, and that's all you're looking for is to. And it's also about keep their feet to the fire, you know, make them do something, put the pressure on them, and all you can do is have your point of view, you know.
Yeah, I think that's when you kind of keep the respect from people and they see you actually holding their feet to the fire. You know, it's kind of making people accountable for their actions and what they say. Because if you don't, then that's where it slips. And I think that's where people can kind of be influenced by that lovely easy life, and you know, people start going, oh well, I'll give you this if you kind of let that one go. You go, oh well, it's better for me, isn't it? But then you've really got to look at why did you start this in the first place. It's really hard to hold that kind of
it can be. Sometimes it's a tightrope, and you've got to watch who you're seeing. You've got to watch who you're in a photograph with sometimes, you know. But it was a privilege to be there, you know. I mean, I was there for 2.5 years. And sometimes I did wake up and say, what am I doing? What am I doing here? You know, but at the same time, I was there because I wanted to be there. But the people, more importantly than anything else, people sent me there to do a job. And it was an 8-day week. You know, you don't get time off. You know, you're down there Monday to Thursday. During Brexit, we were there morning, noon and night. And then you come up the road, you want to see your family, but there's a local do on, there's a local event on. You want to be there, because that's what you stood up to stand for the public. So it became an 8-day week. And even if you tried to take a day off, there was always something happening, you know. But that was a privilege to be there. It was a privilege to represent people and go and talk to people, you know.
I think that's what puts people off, especially, you know, they go, oh, well, why doesn't somebody successful in business go into this? Because you're putting yourself on the line, you're putting your reputation, they're going to find every single thing, they're going to dig to try and find something on you. So they've got something to hold your feet to the fire against. And it's all about that, isn't it? It's almost like an in a bribery kind of circle of going, oh, well, I've got the information, so if you don't do that, I'm going to put that out. And it must be difficult. The point I'm trying to make is here, I'm trying to get to the family issue. It takes a lot and a sacrifice, and you can't have one without the other, and it does. That's a big kind of move to make. It's a big decision to kind of do it, to sacrifice a little for the family.
No, and that is, I mean, there was an incident where I was, and I don't like talking about it, but I used a slang word, you know, and I was only talking about food, but it was a slang word, but that was national headlines for a week, you know. Now, I suffered a wee bit through that because I felt I let everybody down by one word, you know. But the people that really suffered was my family, because they seen the headlines, and some of the crap it was spoke about was absolutely over the top. But at the same time, I learned a lesson from it, and I think half of Britain learned a lesson from it, because the word wasn't used as much, but I was generally talking about food, but they made it out as if I was talking about the people, and it wasn't about people, because I've marched for 35 years for every single cause. If there's a rally and a march for the trade unions, I was there carrying my flag, you know, and carrying my feet were doing the walking, you know. Many Saturdays giving up, representing, didn't matter whether it was disability, LGBT, racism, didn't matter what it was. If the trade union flag was there, I was carrying it.
Yeah, that's a tricky position to be in, because it just takes one thing for them to use, and then they have the power to push it out in the press and then make more noise than you can make trying to justify it. Do you know what I mean? It's a difficult one, isn't it?
It is a difficult one. And you know, it's one of the things, like, to be honest with you, I shouldn't really talk about it, you know, because it was one incident against hundreds of other things I've done all my life, you know, which is more important than that one incident, you know.
It just takes one, though, Hugh. That's politics 101. We see it on headlines every day. They try and find anything out. They'll just make it a big, bold word. Well, it's a word we use, we throw away. Me and you will throw words away that we, you know, that would be, you'd be crucified for if you mentioned it in front of press or somebody else, or in front, you know, any leader or anything like that. You've got to be very careful. So that means you pull back your opinions, your own true self. So then you're holding yourself back, and you're like, well, the only thing you can do is not apologise. But are you going to get there not apologising? I don't know. It's a tricky one, isn't it? There's no answer.
Tricky. And you know, see, like myself, if I can't stand up and be honest, there's no point in being there. You know, that's what really frustrates me, because I've always believed, you know, be honest with yourself, and I can be honest with anybody, you know. And it's called, I don't know what it's called, entrapment or anything like that, but the press do try to trap you sometimes to get that one word and things like that. But I'm not holding any excuses. I made an open comment, and the comment was wrong, and I apologise for it. And I've moved on lots more, but it was my family I felt it for. My family was the ones that felt hurt. And one word out of 35 years of being a trade union activist, a labour activist, community activist, I'm hurting myself. And I should move on, you know.
Yeah. So how did you get to this point? You said you're all about injustice, fighting that injustice. Again, I think that can drive you mad as well, about kind of always seeking that out, but it's doing it in a healthy way, and I think clearly you have done that. What's young Hugh like? How did you get to that point of being the spokesperson for people?
I think the young Hugh was I was a deaf child, so maybe I didn't listen to everybody. But as family more than anything. I've got a big family, you know, basically 4 brothers, 4 sisters. You know, 2 were adopted. My mum and dad, lovely people. They actually ended up adopting 3 kids, just because they're a loving family. You know, my dad was a joiner, my mum was a nurse, and they've done a fantastic job bringing up a family of 8. I'm the second youngest, you know. But when my pals, when we finished playing outside, we were pals. I went back into a household of pals, so with more pals, and we've still got that same friendship today. We still go for breakfast as a family, brothers and sisters, every Sunday morning, you know. And it's been great, and we still do stuff together. But we're a good family, and we've all worked all our life. I mean, every one of us were a paper boy or a paper girl, even I should say as well for the girls, you know. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, for a very early age, we were up working, and we've worked all our life. You know, we're now getting to retirement age. We can sit back and look and say, you know what, we've had a good life. We might not have had the money, but we've had a good life.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that, because it's kind of, you've lived through lots of things. I want to go through your kind of CV as well a little bit, like eras. So what was your first job? Where did this kind of this idea about actually I can be the spokesperson? At what age was that?
Yeah, well, I think that my first job was a carpet cutter, working in a carpet retail shop. And I got to know every single carpet and every single pile and every single thing going, and I enjoyed that job. I actually get 16 of my mates locally and all started in this job and opened a big warehouse for carpets and all the rest of it. And that was great achievement. And that was me. I was probably 17 at the time. And I thought, to get my mates and some of the local people a job in here, 17 young guys all got a start in life with a job through myself, getting them into the carpet trade at some point, warehouse and all that. Some of them, that led to getting a better job for other people. I then became the local barman, basically, in the pub. And I was a charge hand. And you met all walks of life. And that's really where your education starts in helping people, because you can see the poor man coming in, counting his coppers, and the rich man coming in trying to show off and spending all his money, you know. So you've seen all walks of life. And that was the beauty of the pub trade, you know. And I suppose, didn't matter what happened in the house, when I stood behind the bar, it was my stage. You know, I became the showman, basically, and I enjoyed it. And the punters loved it as well, and I loved it. So that gave me the opening up more than anything else, being confident that I could speak, you know. I then started in the post office, and we were getting 21.5 hours as a part-timer. But the postmen were getting 60 hours, the full-time staff, because they were getting 20 hours overtime. And I remember at the time I was in family credit, and you needed 24 hours for family credit. But the business only gave you 21.5. I says, if you give me another 3.5 hours, I'll get full money, you know, off the government to make up my family credit money. So that didn't happen. We had a big speech at Christmas time. They were arguing over overtime. And I basically gave a big speech, stood up out of nowhere, nobody knew me, stood up and I says, well, all your full-time staff's kids are getting computers, my kids will be getting a selection box. So I became the selection box kid in the Royal Mail.
Really? Yeah.
And that's what happened at the time.
Yeah.
So that then gave me the freedom to become a union rep. We moved into a night shift job with 6 people, and there was 6 brushes and 6 shovels, and we were asked to do the cleaning, and we refused because only 3 of us were asked to do the cleaning and the other 3 weren't. So that was my first dispute. We never done any cleaning, and we became, what happened then was that basically I became a spokesman, and I started doing a lot of union work for there, and for there I've never stopped.
Well, it kind of sounds like it just sounds like from the off you've you've been representing people. Were you like this you clearly like this as a kid? There must have been an air of confidence in you. You must have been like, I can do this. Was it I can do this to help people, or was it I can do this because you just felt it in you to do it?
I think I just felt in me that I had to do it, you know. I remember going home saying to my dad, Dad, they're looking for a union rep in the work. I says, who'd want to do that job? That was on the Friday. By Monday, I was a union rep because I was basically speaking up and I felt I could do it, you know, I could speak up for people. And that's what it was about. That big meeting where we were arguing over me getting 21.5 hours and the full-time workers doing 60 hours. And all I was asking was, share the hours, give us all equality. And that's all I've ever looked for in life, equality.
So that kind of drove you forward, really, because people were clearly like paying some attention to you and kind of listening as well. So it must be that you must have something in you that people are drawn to. People want to stand up and listen. Did you notice that as well, Hugh? Because sometimes people talk and nobody bloody listens. You know what I mean? So it must be something special about you.
I think, do you know, actually, I have thought about that, you know, but I don't really get too much deep into it because to me, I'm still a young boy, you know. I forget my age, you know, I'm 62 now, but I forget my age because to me, I'm still doing a fight, I'm still speaking up for people and still get that injustice. If there's injustice out there, I want to help people and I'll continue doing that as long as there's breath in my body. And I'll continue doing that. I've just went back to work basically after the loss of my wife and I became the union rep again because I just feel things have fell apart and I need to pick up the broken pieces and rebuild it again.
Okay, so you took a step back a little bit.
I took a wee step back because, well, basically the business sacked me because of my union beliefs and I was out of the job for 16 months. That gave me time to write the book, The Auchengeich. But now I'm back and now I've seen it so much, Royal Mail's getting really looking bad now. And I thought, this needs picked up again, you know, and I stepped forward to take the plate again.
So a guy who has been working and been quite successful with the unions, they don't like your opinions on running unions. I kind of like, it makes no sense to me that surely, right, the success of what you've just had in the past, what, X amount of years, 30 years, something like that, why now? Just because of button heads or what? What was the issue? Can you talk about the issue?
Well, the issue to me was I still see things getting done wrong and I still see management doing things wrong. And I was sacked wrongfully as well. And that's why I get my job back. So I just feel there's still work to be done here. We still need to get the agreements. We've 18 days dispute and I felt as if we lost everything. So we have to rebuild it. And while I'm here just now, I want to be in the room, not outside the room. You know, if I can talk and I can go further than the local management, because I just feel this needs to be discussed properly. I've got the experience and the ammunition, and I'll speak up, I'll talk up. I'm not a shy boy, because you wouldn't be here without being a shy boy anyway, but I'll definitely speak up when I see injustice and if I see things are wrong. And I see young men running themselves into the ground now because everything's all computerised, every minute is all measured. We shouldn't have that, you know, and the pressure's on them to do work, and it shouldn't be about that. There's no break. This is a modern system now where no matter what you do, even if you're on a till in a retail shop, everything's all measured by time. Even if you're in an office, sending an email, it's the time to look at. How long did that take? everybody's under pressure now. Work, work, work. And that is not the way the system should be.
No, it's not, and clearly it's kind of, you can see the effects. So obviously, you know, I don't have to go into social media because I do bang on about it quite a lot. But it's that, I think we're kind of losing the purpose of what we are as humans, you know what I mean? It's sort of, why are we pushing for what? For what's the gain? To kind of, to save a minute, I don't know.
No,
you know?
and that is what is the gain. You know, at the end of the day, all these people are doing is they're going to burn themselves into the ground. Now, I done overtime like everybody else. I worked every day in a minute because I had a family of 3 to feed. You know, I had holes in my shoes, with beer covered with beer mats while my kids were going to school with more money than me going to work. Because you done whatever you had to do for the kids and your family to get the best you can do. So I've done all the long hours, but there was breaks in between that. There was a time to talk, a time to... Even now, the local postman's told you can't talk to the customer because you're wasting time. And that should not be like that. And that's the same in life everywhere, I think, just now, because everything's all computerised, digitised, and everything is all about the clock's ticking, and that is getting every ounce of work out of you, which should not be the way forward.
Yeah, because I think doctors have got, what, 7 minutes to see you? Is that something like that?
Things like that. Carers come in to see people who's, when you reach an age, you need care. But you get 15 minutes to come in, make them a dinner, put the kettle on, get them a cup of tea. Don't chat to them. Basically, that's what they say to people now. Don't chat. You know, I'm a chatter, as you probably know, but I'm a chatter because I want to hear people. I want to talk to people. I don't want to run out of the room halfway through a sentence, you know. And everybody's got an interest in life, and that's what life's all about, you know. People want to talk, especially when you're an older age. You chat at the door. It's probably the first person I've seen in days, you know. All they want to do is talk, and I want to listen to them because they've served us all their life, and I'm still working. But while I'm still working, I want to hear what they've got to say.
So let's talk about the gap that you had time to write the book. Why write the book? What's the book about, please?
The book became because basically the Royal Mail sacked me for 16 months during a trade dispute, and I got my job back. But that gave me the beauty of that book. Every cloud's got a silver lining, and the beauty is now the Auchengeich book is out there. And the Auchengeich book was a disaster happened in 1959, and that story has not been told properly till now. The book is out there for the people, the local people. There's 4 gents who you can't see in the camera just now behind me, who are the men of Auchengeich who built this up. I only came in 20 years ago and I attended a memorial service. I heard the names getting read out every year, 47 names, but I never knew one face. And I wanted to know more about the miners that actually lost their place in this disaster. So since then, I've been doing the work on the book, and it gave me time to do a proper book. I've now met some of the families. 76 children were left without a father. There was 41 widows, and 59 men died that shouldn't have died. It was an accident. And because of that, I wanted that story out, not just for the people locally, Moodiesburn and Christon, but every miner. That could have been any miner up and down the whole of the UK. Every miner went down that hole, didn't know if they were coming back up. And that's what this book's all about. The book's about how the communities were built. The mining pit owners owned the families. They built a wee community just across from here called Brig End with 100 houses. And that was only for miners. And if they miners didn't pay their rent and didn't buy out their shop, they didn't have a job. You were evicted and you were chucked out. So the mining pit owners owned the families in a sense. And they wanted you to have sons. They didn't want you to have daughters, because the sons could go down the same, follow their father's footsteps down the pit. As long as the miner who owns you, he owns you, he owns your family. That's what he wanted. And that's what the mining communities, how they built, because they had nothing. They only had each other. You know, there was nothing fancy for them. They only had each other, and that's where their strength lay. They worked together, they lived together, and they stood together. And that's what being a miner and being a trade union rep is all about. You stand up for each other in unity.
Yeah, there's quite a few connections within that as well, Hugh. You're talking about your sort of the injustice and you having to, you know, fly the flag and be the voice of that. And then that's a huge injustice. It's massive.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest ones ever. You've got an industry that's created a town and you work for them and they want you to have sons just so they could kind of keep this thing moving and keep this thing going, you know. At the end of the day, obviously when the pit's closed, they're gone, they don't give a shit. And that's a problem, do you know what I mean? And that's a huge problem.
But when the mine's closed, you still have the community.
Exactly.
That's the most important thing. You know, the most important thing, it's like me, when I was involved in my community, it's about the local people. You stand up for your local people, you know. As a trade union rep, I stand up for the workers in the workplace. I then became a North Lanarkshire Trade Union Council Secretary, which is a wider area. So basically I became the council, I became a union rep for the full area in Lanarkshire through the North Lanarkshire Trade Union Council. And that's where I met the Auchengeich guys through that, because they have a memorial service here every year in September. The closest Sunday to the 18th of September, they have a memorial service here. And that got me intrigued, because I had never heard of this disaster.
Yeah.
I'd never heard about it. And as someone who was deep in trade union and activity, I thought, why have I not heard this story? You know, so when I heard the story, I've came every year, I heard the names, and I'm saying, where's the book? There must be a book on this. There was a book done, but it wasn't, I don't like to criticise anybody else's book, but it never gave a picture in it. And I wanted the faces of these men to be known. I wanted these 47 men did not die in vain. You know, it was one of Scotland's worst mining disasters. There has to be a book on it. And since then, I've met his families. The youngest child now is 65, and the oldest is about 85. But they take themselves back to being young kids between 5, 10, 12-year-old, and we've had tears and laughters. Now, these 85-year-old children took themselves back to being 10-year-old. They have never forgotten that day of that disaster, the day they lost their father, and they can remember it. And they're just delighted that their dad will not be forgotten. We say gone but not forgotten, and it's more true here than anywhere else. These 47 miners will not be forgotten. The community will not forget them. All the people who died in that Auchengeich pit. In total, 106 miners died in one pit in 52 years. Their names are in the book because they will not be allowed to be forgotten. But that could have been any mining community up and down the whole of the UK. This disaster could have been anywhere. Every miner went down that pit hole thinking, is this my last day on earth?
I mean, for one community to suffer that much, I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I mean, it was massive in this Lanarkshire community. They came from mostly Lanarkshire, a couple came from Glasgow, but it was this area. You know, it was about this area, the amount of people lost in one village. Big End was a village, basically, just for miners. And they lost a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of kids. And the reason why the kids are so glad the book's out now and they've had a chance to talk about it is because there was a wall of silence. Nobody spoke about it.
Why not?
Because they didn't want the kids to get hurt. They didn't want to research it all the time. They didn't want to talk about the memories, you know. And so there was a lot of pain, a lot of agony that way. So, but these kids can now go to rest in peace knowing that the story's out there.
Yeah, but the thing is, I understand that, but I understand that wanting need for information as well. Yeah, because I come from, my dad died in mine. I wanted the information. I actually want to visualise what that was like at that time and what happened. I want to know exact details. I wasn't given any details. So that is carried with me since I was 16. So I can just imagine exactly all of these other kids with the same thing in their head. I think information is key for this because you're always going to be asking for answers and you're not going to get them until somebody like yourself makes a book about it.
Well, that is one of the best things that's come out of this book, is travel to Australia, America, and even local people. They are saying, we never knew the story. We never knew what happened to my dad. The details in this book, what happened, when they were found, when they were recovered. And they were entombed for 4 days. They flood the cave to put the fire out, you know. It also helped preserve the bodies of the men. But no man got back home. They were taken straight from Auchengeich. They set up a temporary mortuary to take them home. But the children never forgot their fathers, you know. It's like, I'm grieving just now because my wife, you look at the picture, you know, and that's what keeps me going. These kids didn't know how their dad died. They knew their dad died by a terrible accident, but the details here now. And every mining people have contacted me, people have read the book. They've cried at this book because They now know how much suffering the miners had. Joe, the press never told anybody that, you know, and people forget. The next generation of kids coming up, some of them haven't even seen coal. Never mind, they don't know the history of their DNA of the family. And the DNA of the coal miners is how communities were built.
Yeah, it shapes people, it shapes who you are.
Yeah.
That impact, it must be massive. What, I mean, how did it change a community?
I think it brings them together. I think they still do it. They still help each other. They still look after each other. You know, we had a case here about, I think it was 2 years ago, where somebody's car was stolen. Well, a delivery man doing his work for his kids and all the rest of it, just earning money, but he had to pay. He lost his car, he lost his parcels, he lost everything. And the community got together and they gave him the money that he lost, you know, for his kids, for his family. And that's what communities do. We work together. We're not asking for a rich man's pay. All we're looking for is something to give. Work together, we can give to our kids, you know. As I say, we work together, you live together, you work together, and you stand up together. And that is a power of force that no politician can take away from you.
I can talk all day to you, Hugh, but let's keep this conversation here so we can get the other guys in as well. I tend to leave on a last message. I don't know what that message could be because you're hitting some key points throughout this. But is there anything else you want to say to people out there, to new generations, a younger generation, maybe somebody else who's been through that, and maybe something community-based, whatever you want to talk about, what would be a message to you today?
I think my message to anybody who's going to follow the footsteps, we're following a generation. We stand on shoulders of giants, you know, and never lose your voice. Always stand up for people. Always stand up for injustice. I'm only passing through the same as everybody else, but I'll tell you what, we stand on shoulders of people who stood up. And if we don't stand up, we will have nothing, and they will trample on you. So always stand up. Always stand up for injustice, and be your own person. That's all I ask you to do.
Do you think we've got enough young people doing that now? Do you think there's people with voices who can kind of replace yourself?
There is people there, but my sad fact is, like everything else, that they've got to have a career straight away. There's nobody who works for the bottom up now. They all simply want money, money, money. Money's the root of all evil. Money doesn't do anything for me. It's about passion. It's about helping people. You know, money's the last thing you need. You know, just be yourself and stand up for injustice, and don't let anybody talk you down. Be a stand up for yourself. And be in life. All I say is, I've actually got it on my gravestone now for my wife, because her last things when she was dying was, she says, the boys asked, Mum, what's your words of wisdom? She says, just be happy. Be happy for yourselves. Be happy. And that's all I'm going to leave it with. People say to me, I smile a lot. Well, a smile costs nothing, and it brings back plenty. Just be happy and cherish every moment of every day. And that's all I ask.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hugh.